Give it a few more minutes so that
Mm-hmm.
we'll get in. The numbers leveling off there yet, Sinead?
Yeah, we're moving upwards quickly. We're at 40.
Just give it a minute and then we'll start.
Yeah, leveling off now. So I think we're pretty good.
Hey. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Women Entrepreneurs and Raising VC Funding webinar. I'm Anna-Marie Turley, Manager of the Entrepreneurship and HPSU Operations Department in Enterprise Ireland, and we're delighted to present this webinar in partnership with the Irish Venture Capital and Private Equity Association this morning. I'd like to start by thanking my colleague Sinead Lonergan, Manager for Women in Business in Enterprise Ireland, for all the fantastic work in arranging this webinar this morning. I'd also like to thank Diana Cunningham, Emer Nulan and Magda Sobkov for all their help. Sinead has secured some amazing speakers that you'll hear from this morning, including Sandra Healy from Inclusio, Heidi Davis from Identify Her, Aisling Tilliard from Tandem HR, and Denise Dudu from Kernel VC. The purpose of this webinar is to support companies in all sectors and at all stages of growth that are seeking VC finance. Recognising the underrepresentation of women in this webinar is targeted at encouraging and enabling women entrepreneurs to successfully raise VC funding. At our recent HPSU Start Showcase event, we in Enterprise Ireland were delighted that 37% of all HPSUs that were supported in 2022 were led by women. This is a massive increase since 2012 when the figure was a mere 11%. We also see evidence from the Female Founders and Funders 2020 report from Tech Ireland, which stated that women-founded tech firms in Ireland raised 234 million in 2022, up from a previous record of 230 million in 2021. So again, it's wonderful to see that women-led startups are pushing the bar higher each year. Enterprise Ireland continues to focus on this area to bring about positive, sustainable, long-lasting change in the entrepreneur ecosystem and to harness the full talent and expertise of a diverse population. This is critical as we position Ireland as a leading nation for entrepreneurs to start and scale a business and to be ambitious about the growth that they can achieve. EI has also introduced our new Pre-C Start Fund, the PSSF, with potential support available of up to 50 or 100k, and that funding is in the form of convertible loan notes. More details of which can be found on our website, www.enterpriseireland.com/PSSF, and I'd encourage anybody that's interested to have a look at that. The fund is open, open for business now. Enterprise Ireland invests directly into companies, and we also invest indirectly through seed and venture capital funds. With our most recent seed and venture capital scheme, Enterprise Ireland sought commercial funds that help progress key EI strategic priorities, including our Women in Business strategy. In fact, 70% of the fund managers supported under schemes have women at the partner or investor management level. And of course, we're delighted to say that we're joined by Denise, and you'll hear from her from Kernel shortly. Now, I'm delighted to be joined by Sarah Jane Larkin, Director General at Irish Venture Capital Association, to say a few words. Over to you, Sarah Jane.
Thanks, Anna-Marie, and good morning, everybody. I'm really pleased to be here today for some of you, the start of your funding journey, and for others who are maybe a little further down the line. As Anna-Marie mentioned, we work, myself and Denise, in the Irish Venture Capital Association. Denise is actually our incoming chair for next year, so I'm delighted that she's able to take the time to come and join us. And our organisation represents the risk equity financiers in the market in Ireland. So venture capital funds, private equity, and funds that fund startups at every stage of their journey, from very early stage to those companies that are growing and scaling. And that's what we love to see. We love to see Irish companies taking their first steps in Ireland and staying in Ireland to grow and scale. but we have a concern around the level of funding which has been achieved in recent years by Irish female-founded startups. And while that number is on the increase, you know, as you sit here and look at a wall of women, as we referenced it earlier, none of us can be happy in a world where, you know, less than, in some cases, 20 or 30% of funding is going to female-founded startups. And we are really determined at the IVCA to play our part in changing that statistic and in moving the dial. So last year, for the first time, we collaborated with Enterprise Ireland in a series of events which helped and supported female-founded companies on their funding journey. And all of this work that we're doing is aimed to both demystify raising finance, to give practical advice around how to do it, to smooth your path, and crucially to help female-founded companies really network with the investor community in Ireland and get the support of female funders who are interested in moving those numbers as well. So we're here today to help build out your network and to introduce you and begin that process of introducing you to the investment community in Ireland. So we're really excited to be here and to watch all of you scale and grow. And we'll certainly go through the list of the companies afterwards. And it's always good to see who's been here. And we do watch your progress. And we're delighted to see so many of you, including Heidi and Aisling and Sandra, here today to share their experiences. So thank you very much, Anna Marie and Sinead and all at EI, and looking forward to the webinar.
Thanks indeed, Sarah Jane. So now over to the main show. And we'll start by asking each of you maybe for your elevator pitch or your 30-second pitch. So Sandra, can we kick off with yourself, please?
No problem. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for listening in. My name is Sandra Healy. I'm the founder and CEO of Inclusio. We describe what we do as bringing a scientific, evidence-based approach to measuring culture, diversity and inclusion for employers. We incubated actually in Dublin City University, where we were backed by Enterprise Ireland commercialisation funding, and we spun out in 2020, and we've raised over 6 million in investment to date. So it's head down now for the next couple of years while we work towards Series A. So looking forward to the discussion this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Heidi, you're up next.
Great. It's great to be here today. Hi, everyone. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Identify Her. It's a digital health company, and we're developing really a first of its kind wearable menopausal symptom tracker to bridge the gap between women in need of help and clinicians that don't have a clear diagnostic tool to establish perimenopause or track the efficiency of treatment. I'm the early stage candidate today, so hopefully I'll be useful to the ones that are starting their journey, and I'm really looking forward to the conversations.
Fantastic. Thank you, Heidi. Aisling, yourself, please.
Hi there, everybody. Great to be here. I'm Aisling. I'm the former CEO and co-founder of Our Tandem, which is a performance management and engagement platform. Since sold the business to a Swiss company, and now integrating that business into the wider BCom community. Great to be here.
Fantastic, Aisling. Thank you. And Denise.
Hi all, so I'm Denise Du. I'm a partner in Kernel Capital, where we've been an early stage and growth funder in the Irish market for over 20 years. We've over 200 million in funds under management, and we have invested in 80 companies over 5 funds in that time. My own background is in finance. I would have been in corporate finance prior to establishing the fund with Kernel. And I was head of Ulster Bank Commercial Services prior to taking up that role.
Fabulous. Thank you, Denise. So we'll start into the main body of the discussion this morning. So Aisling, if we kick off with yourself, please, can you tell us a little bit about your funding journey and any tips that you would have that you've come across for engaging with investors that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, sure. So over the course of Tandem's lifetime, we raised 5 million across 3 different rounds. Our very first round was EI, Competitive Startup Fund. And when we first applied, we were turned down, which is a great lesson to persevere, because EI actually gave us some really helpful guidance around what we needed to do in the business to secure the funding the next time. And the next time we went for the funding, Actually, we went for it as part of NDRC's accelerator, which was dedicated at the time to female founders. So it was a great, and we got that one, which was super. So that was our first 55K between NDRC and EI. And it was a great lesson that there's always something better. And that, I think, was always my lesson throughout the investment journey was you get turned down a lot. That's part of the investment journey. Expect to get a lot of no's. There's 100 no's out there. But actually, sometimes that's a blessing in disguise, because what you get turns out to be so much better. If we had got CSF the first time, it would have been just money. And frankly, we wouldn't have known what to do with that money. It was the accelerator program that taught us how to best use our money, how to commercialize, how to market, how to get ready for a bigger seed funding round. So we had a great start with the NDRC Female Founder Accelerator. And actually, it was great to have the support of other female founders. Some of those ladies are my best friends today. So it was a really great start to the business. And then we kind of got ourselves ready through the accelerator for our first funding round. Now, I have to say, readiness was, I certainly attended all the boot camps and stuff, but to say you're ready for your first pitch, you're not ready until you go through it. So it was tough, all the early pitches for a seed round, because you were meeting angels, you were meeting VCs. I was in a space that people probably didn't understand that well. HR tech wasn't exactly on fire, and it had let an awful lot of investors down. So there was an awful lot of, oh, we don't invest in HR tech and so on. So it was tough. And again, I went for this Microsoft funding, and it came with an accelerator in London. And I was convinced this was the must win. We absolutely have to get this, because there's no other future for us if we don't get this. And we didn't get it once again. So lots of disappointments. But within, I think, 6 months of going for that investment, we actually secured a 2 million seed round with a combination of Frontline Ventures and ACT Capital Ventures, and also a couple of angels. So a much better round. You know, even though we were super disappointed not to get Microsoft, actually there was something much better around the corner. We would have run out of money. Had we have gone with the Microsoft accelerator, it definitely wouldn't have been enough. We needed every penny of that 2 million seed round. And that's what I would say is, when you're going for seed round, you know, you're going to give away a good chunk of your business. So try and get as much as you can, because you don't know the journey ahead. And I remember at the time, there's a lot of FOMO with investors. So once somebody says yes, everybody wants to come in. And I remember investors from every investor I had hit up in Ireland rang me going, oh, can we get in on the round? Can we get in on the round? And the round started to get too big, you know, and I remember my investor saying to me, is Aisling, make it big enough, because you don't know the journey ahead. You don't know actually how much you're going to need. You don't know what bumps you're going to hit in the road. So, and he was right. I needed every penny of that 2 million to get to the next round. So, yeah, so, and then we did a bridge round a couple of years later. My tips, very quickly, because I don't want to be hogging the mic here, but my tips for engaging with investors, whether they're angels or VCs or whatever format you go for, is what I learned about them is, in essence, they are risk managers. You know, they look at companies failing every day of the week, and they look at all of the risks in your business. As an entrepreneur, you're optimistic by nature. I think we're all a little bit deluded, right? We all think it's going to be great and it's going to work out, and that's the nature of an entrepreneur. But actually, as an investor, they have to look at, you know, all of the risks that are going to happen on your journey ahead. What they need to see is that you've thought about those risks and you have a plan for them. So really, what you need to do is take a step back from your business plan and pick holes with it. Where would it go wrong? What is the risk? What is the gap? What if the competitors come up with something great? What if, you know, the dominant in your industry come out with something similar to you? You have to think, I suppose, like an investor, to really get through those conversations and make them feel confident that you've thought about those risks and you have answers for it. And confidence is key, I would say. An awful lot of the time, they're looking at you, you know, because in the early stages of your business, they're buying you more than a business in reality.
Mm-hmm.
So they're buying you and your team. So, you know, projecting that confidence and making them feel like you've got this and you're going to persevere the journey, because of course they meet a lot of companies that fall apart because the founders don't persevere or don't, you know, or there's a wear and tear on mental health, and you mightn't have the resilience for it. So they're really looking to your confidence. Can you persevere and be resilient enough to go the mile on the journey? Because they know the journey ahead of you better than you do. They know all the bumps in the road that you're going to hit. They know all the late nights and the hard grind that is ahead of you. So they want to look at you and go, yeah, they're the kind of people who are just going to push through and persevere until they get a winner. And then the rest is, I suppose, just be really confident. I think first-time founders are always very product focused. So I walked in far too excited about my product. I couldn't wait to show everyone my product. They don't really care that much about your product. They care more about the market and the size of the market. And if you get a tiny percentage of that market, is it still going to be a winner? So spend an awful lot more time talking about the business rather than the product. The product, of course, is of interest. They want to know the problem you're solving. They want to know what you're doing. They want to look at your product. But I think what's more interesting to them is, how you're going to make it. What's your route to getting business? What's your route to getting traction for your business? And is that market big enough that even if you only get a tiny bit of traction, you're actually going to be super successful? So I think they would be my main tips. But get ready for lots of no's, and don't let the no's get you down. If you persevere, for every 100 no's, there's a yes out there somewhere. Somebody will go yes. So don't be knocked back when you get the no's. Just prepare for that, and build up your resilience, and be good to yourself, because when you get those no's, it's always disappointing. But if make sure you have lots of self-care built into your roadmap for yourself, because there's a lot of disappointments, but that's okay. When you get the yes, it'll all be worth it. So that would be my main tips.
Some amazing tips there. Thank you so much, Aisling. We'll recap on them later on because there was a lot in that. Heidi, you're at the earlier stages of the journey, as you said yourself. So, can you tell us or share with us what stage exactly you're at in the funding journey, and has your experience, have you got a lot of no's so far, or what's your experience so far?
Yeah, so we are at pre-seed. I guess it's worth saying how we got to where we are now as well. We started off with the New Frontiers Phase 2 program, 15,000 in the grant. That gave us 6 months of really working on that business plan that we had worked on over the last 2 years, but while we were in jobs. So I'd left my job and I could fully focus on that. We then, during that time, applied for the Competitive Start Fund and got that then right after. And then we got follow on with the pre-seed from Enterprise Ireland that replaced the Competitive Start Fund. And after that, we then raised a small amount through a convertible loan note, through private investors and a VC. And then we also got approved for the HPSU match funding. And then recently we got the Women Tech EU from the European Commission, which was a grant. So don't underestimate at least this grant, because the application isn't as big as some of the EIC accelerators. And it does give you 75,000 extra that you can work with. You can't rely on it, but you definitely should think of it as a bonus if you get it. And like Ashley said earlier, she needed every bit of that 2 million. We need every bit of that 75,000 now, even if we didn't plan on having them. So just to remember those as well. My experience today, have we got no's? Yeah, of course we've got no's. It is tough getting investments. It takes a lot of time preparing for pitches, going in there, talking to investors. And I know Aisling already mentioned that whole early stage, it's about the founders. So initially I thought, actually, I don't get it. I don't think it is about the founders, not because I was so confident and thought I was so great and they didn't see it, but more because I didn't think the interest was there. They asked, but there wasn't a lot of questions about why myself and my co-founder were important for the business. But then realized over time that it wasn't necessarily the CV to date. That's one element. But the other thing was really, well, that's my experience, was can you execute on what you're talking about? So it really takes time. So we were talking to people early on that took a few months before they invested. And it wasn't necessarily that they didn't want to, they just wanted to see what can you do over those 2 to 3 months that can show us that you're an executor and not just a talker, I suppose, because we are extremely positive, right? So I suppose that's one of the things that I found the founders, it's about showing that you can actually do what you're saying. And it takes time then from the first time you talk to investors till you prove that you're as good as you say, till you actually get the money in your bank. And that whole period can be quite nerve-wracking because you don't want to stop your product development or wherever phase you're in, where we've had quite a lot of product development time because it's R&D. So you don't want to stop the whole business. You want to get to market. So getting that money in is really, really important. So just to really plan to have a bit of time to do it. It's not fast and you will get no's.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Heidi. And Sandra, I mean, what has your experience been in seeking funding? I know from talking to other women founders like Aisling and Heidi here this morning, do you think there's additional barriers for women that are going out seeking funding, or do you think it's the same for men? What's your experience?
That's a very difficult question to answer because I haven't experienced it from another perspective. But I suppose the research and the stats are telling some kind of a story. I think my experience very briefly. So I spun the idea into DCU. We very similar to Aisling. Our first application was rejected, and we had to go back to the drawing board and start again. And we did that. And then we applied for additional funding and we got rejected for that, and we had to go again. So it's a tough journey there. Yeah, you need a lot of resilience. And then we spun out in on the 1st of December 2020 into COVID, where there was no meetings, and we had to figure out how are we going to keep this business going and how are we going to raise investment during COVID. So I think I did a count at one point. I think I lost count at about 40 presentations, pitches. Wow. Investors. And I'm sure that there was a COVID effect to that as well. You know, not being able to get out and actually physically meet people means there was probably a little bit more nervousness around, you know, they didn't know me, they didn't know our business, they didn't know what the market was going to look like around culture and diversity and inclusion beyond COVID. So and I think risk is a big thing. So Aisling has mentioned that, you know, like investors, again, I love my product. I think it's absolutely beautiful and it's wonderful, but that's not what investors are investing in. You know, they're investing in, you know, what's the market opportunity here? What's your ability as a team to convert and to realize that opportunity? So I think and sorry, just to say, we raised 1.66 million within 10 months. So it was tough, but we did it. And then the second round, then we just closed last year. That was our pre-seed. We closed our seed last year for 4.1 then. So that's been our journey. On the second round, it was somewhat easier in that our existing investors all came back in again, and then we brought on a new lead. But I think what was my experience? I think like you have to be absolutely know your numbers. You have to absolutely know your market. You can't you have to be all over all of that. It's not just about your product. It's not. You're running a business. You have to be able to tell the commercial story, and you know, certainly what I've learned along the way is if you don't know it, there's loads of people out there that can help you that are, you know, a couple of steps ahead, or like what we did for preparation. And in fairness, if any entrepreneurs come and ask me, I say to them, before you go for your pitch, reach out to some friendly VCs or investors or angel investors that you know, and be able to have a conversation with them and get them to almost test you, if you like, so that you've done that kind of trial run of the probably unanticipated questions that you might get asked when you're pitching. And I think that's a really important thing. You need to be prepared, right? You're going to know absolutely everything around your product because you've built it from the ground up. But you need to be equally as, you know, proficient around your market, the market opportunity, and how you're going to commercialize that. And again, I think we've talked a little bit about risk. Right, what they're looking for is risk, you know, and any investment is a risk, but what they're looking at is what's the least risk I can take here. So you being able to build confidence that you know what you're talking about, I think is really important. And there's a journey on that. That's not just one meeting and one pitch. That's the very start of creating curiosity. And then there'll be many more deep dive, and then into due diligence. And then it'll probably take you twice as long as you thought at the best of, you know, term sheet to money in the bank. So
Okay.
it's a tough journey. And the question you ask me, do I think it's harder for women than men? And like, who know? We don't know that, you know, like sometimes I see, you know, reports in the newspaper, you know, a couple of lads out of a college just got raised 3 million of investment. And I think, wow, how did they do that? And who knows, you know? So certainly my journey, I wouldn't say was easy for lots of different reasons. And I don't know if there's a gender effect to that. So.
Fair point. Okay, thanks, Sandra. I suppose just to summarize what we're hearing there, I think I've heard the word resilience a lot. I've heard the journey a lot. I think about timing in terms of knowing what's coming around the corner and getting the right investors in at the right time, knowing your market as well as the product, and give yourself, as Sandra said there, twice as long as you expect things to come through. And I suppose just leading on then to that, Denise, you know, we've talked a little bit about men versus women in terms of the numbers going in. So, I mean, Crunchbase would indicate a low percentage of VC funding going to women. You know, what's your opinion on that? Do you think it's true or not? Or do you think it's because there's not the same number of businesses started by women, or what's your thoughts on it?
So just to give a little background, Anna-Marie, is I think it's important for us to remember that in 1996, which is just 5 years before I joined Kernel, that was the first seed and venture capital scheme launched in Ireland. So at that time, the whole innovation industry was so embryonic in Ireland. And we've come a huge way in 25 years, 27 years, you know. So we've seen a transformative improvement in the whole innovation scheme in Ireland. There's fantastic support, both direct and indirect now. We're now in an innovation hub and recognized globally as one. So that transformation has also now started, I would think, in the last 10 years in the female funding landscape. You know, I heard you say earlier about the EI figures, that we've also at Kernel had a similar journey. In 2009, 4% of our portfolio were female founded or female led companies. And by 2019, we got that up to 26%. And we've kept it at that. We've got great companies such as, we've Dr. Tara Dalton, who's on her second. She's a repeat entrepreneur within our portfolio. We've Dr. Anita Finnegan, based in Dundalk, who has cybersecurity for connected medical devices. We've had Sandra Whelan down in Waterford, who with her husband has a company, IVRE, VR Education. So we see lots of females coming onto the landscape, lots of regions, lots of different fields, you know, which is very encouraging. And in 2018, Tech Ireland set a target for that female funders in Ireland would receive 100 million in funding in one single year. And I certainly, and I was in the VC community nearly 18 years at that time, and I thought, goodness, that's an ambitious figure. That's really ambitious, you know, well done, Tech Ireland. By 2020, ladies, we had met that figure. By 2021, we had doubled the figure. And I'm delighted to say that last year, female funders in Ireland got 234 million. And that's 16% of what the total funding was. So we're not on a par, we're far from being on a par, but the journey is certainly going the right way. You know, we're getting there.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so, and that hasn't been achieved by accident. That has been achieved by a huge industry focus, a governmental focus, an Enterprise Ireland focus, and an industry focus through ourselves at the IBCA and, you know, within the membership group. 40% of the Irish Venture Capital Council is represented by women. Out of the last, including my own chair coming up, the last 4 chairs, 3 have been female chairs. of our membership, 20% of the partners are now female, and 30% of the investment executives, the younger cohort coming up, are female. You know, 20 years ago, I can remember 3 of them. You know, you walked into a room of 200 people, there was a very small handful of females. That landscape has changed hugely. It's very encouraging. So, and I have to say, the Irish figures, by the way, are excellent against our European and global counterparts. So we're doing something right here. And, you know, with the help of Enterprise Ireland and the help of all the excellent female founders, you know, those figures will continue to grow.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Denise. Aisling, back to you, and I know you did allude to this earlier on in terms of, you know, when you were speaking to investors and trying to break down the barrier of, you know, being a HR tech company trying to seek investment, and that was difficult. How did you convince investors to invest in a fairly disruptive field?
Yeah, I think in the end, investors are always backing a market opportunity and a commercialization of that market. So I focused an awful lot on, you know, the team were the right team to move forward. We came from the industry, the team that was there. So we had a lot of credibility, a lot of network already in the industry. So I suppose they could see that, okay, there's a route there. It's not, you know, and I think that they always feel somewhat comforted when you understand your industry, or you have some insight, or your team has some insight on your industry. Albeit many successful tech businesses come from people who had nothing to do with their industries, and they just have a very fresh approach. But I think we focused a lot on, we have the right team to execute on this because we understand the problem so well. We're able to talk to the buyers in a way that they'll understand, that we bring some credibility with us because of our experience. And we just really focused on, you know, the fact that we had the right team to execute on this. So I think that helped overcome any of the skepticism that might have been around HR tech at the time. But I think the other thing was, in the end, we recognized we needed to create a bit of FOMO. And now this is with all respect, Denise, but investors do have a lot of FOMO about them. And if you kind of drive your round, because I felt I was talking and 6 months was drifting by and I was still talking, and I was like, okay, enough already. We need a deadline. So I think one of the tactics that worked very well for me was to go, actually, we're closing the round on this date. We've got an awful lot of interest. Are you in or out? So creating that artificial deadline and hitting them all up at the same time as well was a very powerful way of pushing them toward a decision. And I would say that if you're out in the market, don't go piecemeal of talking to one investor 1 month and 3 months later talking to another one. When you've got your pitch ready, get out there and talk to them all at the same time. But first go after the people that you don't want investment from, because your pitch is going to be a little bit crap in the first few iterations, and you're going to learn all the questions that come up, so you can refine the pitch for the ones that you actually really do. So if I was you, I would sit down with a list of all of the investors from most desirable to least desirable, hit up your least desirable investors first, and then go to your most desirable, because you'll have practiced it so many times, your pitch gets better over time. You're able to answer the questions like that really quickly. After a couple of pitches, all the investors kind of ask more or less the same questions. You get really good at answering them. So, but try and do it within a time frame, so that, and I've learned this from other founders as well. The founders who go out there and go, actually with real confidence, and they go, this is where we're at. We're closing the round on this date, and they push the investors toward their deadlines. It doesn't always work, but I think you have to create some sort of FOMO, because if they think you're leaving, because I remember for our lead investor going to them and just going, look, I'm done here. We've talked long enough. I'm actually going to go elsewhere. They were like, oh no, let us write your term sheet. You know, so you do have to create that sort of sense of, it's a bit like dating, you know,
It sounds very much like it, actually.
bit like
from what I
dating,
remember.
It's like if you don't look interested, then they're 10 times more interested. You know, so there's a touch of playing those games a little bit about it. Now, you don't want to overdo that, right? But I think you do have to kind of create a lot of momentum around yourself and do the I'm hot right now. You're either get in right now or you don't get in sort of thing. So I think you do have to go in, and it takes a little bit of confidence and projection. And by the way, I mean, I was bottling it when I did these. I was like, oh God, I could lose the whole deal by chance in this. But in the end, you know, you have to take a few risks to kind of close the deal. Otherwise, it can drag on, and they can just talk and do, I suppose, what Heidi was referencing there earlier. They can, you know, just wait and see how much they execute. But that can go on for months and months until they're convinced by the business. So yes, there's a period of warm up, getting to know you, but I suppose don't let that drag on forever would be my advice.
Great, thank you. And Sandra, I mean, top tips from you. You've mentioned the resilience, you've mentioned the know your market and how you're going to get a piece of the market. You've mentioned the time frame. So other top tips that you would give to our audience today, or is there a magic ingredient for looking for that investor? What do you think?
I think I was speaking at the Dublin Tech Summit there last week, and I was asked a question around, you know, the transition for me in particular, moving out of the corporate world into entrepreneurship. And for me, I didn't have a natural network. So I didn't have a network of VCs, right? So I was kind of starting from scratch. And I recognized that early on. And then I started to look out around me. So it's interesting, both Aisling and Heidi talked about being part of accelerator programs. That certainly is a place that you'll find like VCs in residence and things like that. And I think when you meet one, if you're asking the right questions and you're doing the right thing, they'll introduce you to another and another and another. And I think it's important to realize that what you're doing is you're in a new space now. You know, you're going to be like VCs is a different network. So you have to think about how can I get into their world? And, you know, it's not necessarily through women's networks either, unfortunately, right? Because if there was a whole load of VCs hanging around in women's networks, we wouldn't be having this webinar today. Okay, so we need to think about that, you know, that it's good to have a safe space and a place for you to go and learn from people who are a couple of steps ahead of you. I think that is really important. But you have to think about how do you get into their world. And, you know, Enterprise Ireland have been absolutely phenomenal for us around that. You know, we're in the university, we were able to tap into their network. So I would say from day one, ask yourself that question, who do I know, or who do I know who can introduce me to VCs, and start to build relationships and your network with them, so that the first time they see you is not the first time you're having a formal engagement of where you're trying to pitch your business. So that's the starting point. So anticipate that could be coming down the line for you, even if it's a couple of years. The second thing I would say is the practice piece, really, really important. As Aisling said, they all ask the same questions most of the time, right? So if you get the opportunity to practice in a friendly environment or an ask me anything before you go formally, that's really important that you get an opportunity to do that. And the other thing I would say is, you know, like we're further down the line, right? But we're only at the very beginning in some respects. Like we're tapping into people that are ahead of us around things like pricing, you know, market entry, market insights, sector, you know. So don't think you have to know everything. Like I was thinking about, and some of you may have heard this saying that we teach our boys to be brave and our girls to be perfect. You ever heard that? You know, and I find certainly for myself, you know, it's something I'm challenging myself on, because I'm not perfect. I've never been an entrepreneur before. I don't know everything, and it's a real challenge to get beyond going, stop, you don't know everything, ask. There's other people that are ahead of you who've done this before. And as Aisling said, they know, you know, they're able to look around the corners and look ahead and identify things that you haven't even anticipated are going to be a challenge for you. So seek advice, I suppose, is what I'm asking there. You know, broaden your network, seek advice. And certainly I have found anybody I've ever reached out to has been hugely helpful. And then I'm paying that forward now when people are coming to me asking me, I make sure I give the time and pay that forward. I think that's important as well.
Terrific, thank you. And Heidi, same question for yourself. Tips so far, what have you learned?
Yeah, I'm not going to repeat some of the things Sandra said, but that warm introduction, if you can make it happen, and it might take time, it's really, really powerful. And that's what we found. We get a much better conversation once we get in there if we've had a warm introduction. Now, you can't always get that, and it can be hard to get that. But if you do, and if you work hard to try and find somebody that can give it to you, it really is a better start. That's what we found anyway. And then once you go in, I know we talked about practice, but really to be prepared for anything. I found not everybody wants a pitch. Somebody just wants a conversation. Somebody just wants to hear the story, but they are able to do either one of them, whatever format they want once you walk into that meeting, and still be able to have a clear story. Because you can be caught a bit off guard if you really worked on your pitch and you have this perfect pitch and they go, oh, that's okay, we don't need to see the pitch. Just tell us about, the problem solution. So that you have the pitch in your head and you can tell that story without it next to you. So really just be prepared for any format. So there's a lot of practice in that. And then the other thing that really worked for us was that our lead investor was a really strategic investor. And actually he was introduced to us from other investors that were thinking about investing and hadn't invested. And that was Liam Casey. And his background is in hardware. We're building hardware. One of the things that a lot of the VCs and angel investors were worried about, because it's risky. It's looked at as risky. I think I talked to him for about 2 hours the first time we met. He understood our approach. I could explain how we were de-risking that. And then what I really liked is we're obviously working on a women's problem. It is, men are affected by it, but they don't maybe see it the same way as women do. And once I talk to women, they all sit and nod. When I talk about the problem, men kind of just staring. What he had done was, before I met him, he had called a group of women that he knew and just asked. So he came in knowing that, okay, it's a problem. They find it hard not understanding what they're going through perimenopause. So the problem wasn't even something I had to go through with him. And then secondly, he had gone to a doctor and said, how do you go about diagnosing perimenopause? And realized that he was going, it's a nightmare. So the fact that he had that interest was the other thing. So find somebody that understands what you're doing and that can commercialize it as well. So he has both ends of it. He can do the manufacturing. He has brought them to market. So he has that whole chain. And that really makes us much stronger when we talk to other investors, because we have somebody backing us that really understands our model. And then secondly, someone that really understands your problem and thinks you're solving something really important. And I know they have to do that to invest, but he really got it before I even said anything. So yeah, someone you can talk to, work with, and that has some skill set for something strategic that will help your business.
Fantastic. Okay, that's really, really good advice. Thank you, Heidi. And Denise, I suppose, because coming from your side, from the VC side, can you talk a little bit about how you would source potential deals, or what features in a pitch would stand out for you? I mean, we've heard a lot about people, knowing the numbers, knowing the market, being able to distinguish themselves that way, not talking all about the product, the team, the importance of the team. What are the standout things in a pitch for you?
Okay, so just to start, where we would source our deals now, we're currently investing in later stage deep tech. So that would be very university and our own network focused. That's an area of speciality we have. But when we were deploying earlier stage seed funds, we would go through the HPSUs, companies, we would go to all the technology transfer offices, and we would get a huge amount of cross referrals from within our own portfolio. Again, that warm introduction that Heidi and Aisling are speaking about. And we have 80 companies in our portfolio. There's over 100 co-investors within that, from the angels to other VCs, to institutional investors. Within that, there's 250 tier executive level employees. So we have a huge amount of cross referral within our own portfolio, and Ireland is small. The ecosystem is small. There's no investor you can't get at. You know, we are small. So that's the great advantage for the entrepreneurs. You know, everybody is accessible, and there's nobody will turn down helping an early stage company if they can help. And it's very surprising sometimes to our portfolio companies. They come to us and we say, okay, look, we may not be an expert in this field, but we're very interested in the product, but we'd love to know if you could get somebody at your board level who would be an expert in this field. You know, and they look within their own network, and they can very often identify people who will come and give a validation to the company by joining the board, and maybe even putting a little bit of private investment in. That's huge because it's industry knowledge, you know. So that's one of the things on sourcing. On pitching, I suppose I have a couple of points. A lot of what has been said already, but my very first point would be keep it short, simple, and concise. Don't fill every bit of every slide with graphs and charts, and, you know, keep it short, simple, and concise, because you really want to get your target message across. You need to come across very confident. You need to come across as an industry expert in your field. You need to give whoever you're pitching to the confidence that you know what you're talking about. You know, where we heard earlier about people saying the interest in the route to market and the target market. Absolutely correct. That's what we're interested in. You know, ladies, that is it. But we don't want to hear, well, Forrester says my target market is 4 billion and I only need to get 1%. I want to hear, how are you going to get that 1%? Who's going to be your first beta customer? Who is the buyer of this product within the large institutions that you're going for? Who, you know, how do the budgets for that product work? So we don't want to hear, I only need to get 1%. I want to know, how are you going to get that 1%? And I prefer to have a knowledgeable, I worked out I'm going to get 0.5% through this, this, and this, than having, you know, and after that, then I'll work further on. Than having I get 1%, I'm not sure how. So that's that. On team, extremely important, as Ashley said, and we need to see that the promoter of the company has clear leadership qualities. And we'll back a leader without a team, but we won't back a team without a leader. You know, you need to show your leadership qualities, you need to show your intellect, your drive, and your ambition.
Fantastic.
And then again, I think it was Heidi said, identify near-term milestones. And the reason that, you know, the first time, and there is a bit of a dating going on, because, you know, you've got to get on with each other. This person's going to be a part of the board, they're going to be a part of your company, they're joining the journey with you. So the chemistry has got to be right, you've got to get on. You've got to know that that investor will help create value creation milestones with you. But they've got to know that when you say something, you're going to deliver on it. So don't overpromise and underdeliver. Do it the other way around. Say, you know, say, I'm going to achieve this in the next 3 to 6 months, and achieve it. You know, make it achievable.
Okay.
So they'd be kind of a lot of my top tips. Don't expect your investor to transform your company. They won't. We don't invest to drive the companies ourselves. We invest to assist in the value creation, you know, to help with the stumbling blocks that we see other companies make, to help maybe You know, if it's a very complex product or a very complex market, we understand that. So sometimes we can help our companies the correct way to articulate that for their market, their target market. You know, we bring experience of seeing many scenarios. We can bring co-investment. We can bring institutional introductions at times. And we always help all our investees at all times to be investor ready. Be investor ready at all times. You know, you don't know when you'll be, it could be an informal pitch, but it's a pitch.
Absolutely fantastic, Denise. Thank you so much. I think we're nearly coming, excuse me, to an end of time for our panel session. So just before I hand over to Sinead for the Q&A that have come in, I think some of the key messages, just to try and summarize, and there's a lot that has been said this morning of fantastic information. Resilience has been said several times. Don't be afraid to ask for help. People are always willing, as Sandra and Aisling and Heidi and Denise have said, that everybody is willing to help. So don't be afraid to ask for help, whether that be for introductions or for practice pitches. Just go out there and ask for help. Confidence, know your team, know your journey, know what the investors are looking for. Think about the de-risking element, the picking the holes, as everybody has said, how you're going to get over those barriers. Over deliver and under promise, I think, as Denise has said as well, and be a leader. And that goes back to the confidence thing, I think, that everybody has said. So I think Denise has summed it up really nicely in terms of saying everybody will invest and back a leader. Without a team, they won't do it the other way around. So I think that's all terrific advice. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Aisling, Heidi, Denise, Sandra. It has been absolutely fabulous. And if you'll just stay on now that we can maybe address some of the questions, over to you, Sinead. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, everybody. That was fantastic. Really, really interesting. Now we've got a couple of questions in. First question for Sandra. Why did you choose the commercialization route versus direct investment? And what were the benefits of the same?
Yeah, I think it more chose me than I chose it. So I pitched to a female founders program. I came out of Vodafone with an idea, and I describe it as myself and 10 slides. That's that was the idea. I didn't have a team or anything. I just recognized the market opportunity. I pitched to a female founders program, and I describe it as the tumbleweed moment. There were 7 people sitting across me going, what the bloody hell is she talking about? Diversity, inclusion, compliance. And they were just like, nah, it's not going to happen. So I didn't get a place on the program. And at the same time, DCU had come to me and asked me, would I go into the university to develop and deliver the EDI strategy? And I said, I will, if there's an opportunity for me to bring this idea with me and build this tech platform. So we did a bit of research around the Enterprise Ireland commercialization funding. And so that was my journey, which is quite a unique one. But I have to say, on the other side of it now, it was disruptive technology. The market wasn't ready for what we were bringing to the market. So it was actually a really good thing to bring it into a university. And I did my master's in org psych in the university. So it was great because I was able to tap into the ecosystem and the expertise to bring something to the market that's actually quite unique. And I don't know if we would have done that without incubating it in a university. So there's pros and cons. The pros, you know, if you're kind of ahead of the market, I think it's a really good thing to consider. But if you're timely in your market, it might slow you down. So you have to kind of weigh that up. If you have the opportunity to do it, I think it's great. But it brings a particular set of challenges because you can't register your company as a company while you're in commercialization. The minute the tap is cut off, it's gone and you're bootstrapping within 24 hours. That can be quite challenging because you can't raise capital because you haven't registered a company. So you get stuck in this cycle of, and then obviously there's equity share to be negotiated on your way out the door as well. So there's pros and cons. I get more calls asking me around all of that. So I would say be very considerate, speak to other people who've been through it. And you'll know if it's the right thing for you, I think.
Super. Thank you, Sandra. Question for Heidi. How has your experience of pitching a digital health tech company been like to VCs?
I don't know if it's any different than pitching anything else. I guess you try to get in with the VCs that have an interest in digital health. I think the hardest thing for us has really been the hardware component. Because we call ourselves a digital health company, and that's what we are, but we're enabled by hardware. That's the thing that might scare them a bit initially, at least before we got Liam Casey on board and before they understand kind of the de-risking we have done with analog devices. But yeah, no, I don't think there's a special experience with digital health, to be honest.
Thank you. There's another question coming in regarding timelines, and I might give that one over to Aisling, if that's okay. Can you please advise of timelines involved and how old your businesses are now for each of you, but with regards to the timelines for fundraising, Aisling?
Yeah, so my business was 6 years old, and over the course of that, I would have done 3 separate funding rounds. On average, I'd say they took me 6 months. I think, as Sandra said, though, assume it's going to take longer. And that's one of the real key things, is that you have runway, so that you're not at the point of desperation where you've run out of money and you're looking for money. That's the worst case scenario. Investors tend to be very cautious of those scenarios. So, in an ideal world, give yourself a good, I would say, 6 to 9 months to do a funding round. And my one tip around that would be, make sure that somebody is there supporting you to run the business, because it's really tough. Fundraising is pretty much a full-time job, and it's really tough to juggle the fundraising and the sales and the running of the business and so on. So if you have a partner somewhere, maybe split up the activities to go, one of us is fundraising, ideally your CEO, and the other one is kind of taking care of business. Because I can certainly say, for me, my business was in worse shape after my fundraising rounds than it was going into them, because you just have so little time to spend on the business.
Well, that leads me into the next question for Sandra. You appear to be giving up a lot of time speaking at a number of conferences and webinars. How do you fit it all in, or even find time for yourself while working on the business?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and one my investors ask me every day as well. What I would say is, very rarely would I do an event that's not around business development. So I know people mightn't see it like that, but this is an exception, obviously. I do take time to pay it forward, because for me that's very important, because there's always somebody else's door that I'm knocking on. So these type of events are the exception. But like speaking at the CIPD or Dublin Tech Summit and all of those things, like, that's not about thought leadership for me. That's building business. Like one of those events, I came away with 40 leads, and now my team are following up on all of them. So it might look like I'm out there talking, but actually what I'm doing is building the business. It's not just about building the profile of the business. I'm very considered, like I'm responsible for building the business as well. So I'm quite conscious that it's a very important part of the work I do, to attract potential customers to the business, and then making sure we follow up on that. So how do I fit it all in? I have a great team of people behind me, is what I would say. That's really important. I have people that keep it all moving for me, and it's efficient that I'm there. And I don't hang around either. I go, I do what I have to do, and I'm back at my desk usually within the hour. So
fantastic, well done. It's 10:28. I'm going to just take one more question before we close off for the hour. How can a manager of an innovation hub help women entrepreneurs get access to potential investors? I'm not sure who to direct this one to. Any takers?
I'm happy to take this on, Sinead. I think we would do some work in the IVCA with a number of different entrepreneur hubs, and the advice is probably no different to for some of the individuals here. Connect, come to these events, connect in afterwards on LinkedIn, and talk to us about what you're trying to do. And if it's at all possible to connect you with our members, or their appropriate events or opportunities to do that, we'll always be more than happy to to do that.
That's terrific. Thank you, Sarah Jane. I'd like to just start by thanking all of the panelists for giving up their time today. It's been fantastic, and for everybody on the call that's joined to listen in to the tips, and to Anna-Marie for chairing. I just wanted to advise you of what's coming next, because this is the beginning of a series of events that Enterprise Ireland is running in collaboration with the Venture Capital Association. Next up will be an equity class on June, an equity masterclass on June 30th. So following this seminar, you will get a mail to advise of the equity class coming up, and the details of which, and we'd like you to take part in that, or at least to indicate your interest if you are interested in taking part. Following that will be business mentoring during July and August, with one venture capital company involved and 2 mentors from Enterprise Ireland Mentors Panel. And then after that, there will be an investor-ready panel in September, and the dates already have been defined, September 6th and 7th. So that's similar to the investor panels that Enterprise Ireland regularly organise, but for this particular group of people on the call. And to finalise everything, we have a networking event late September hosted by the Venture Capital Association. So we're looking forward to this journey. This is another journey that we're beginning here. Hopefully that will be helpful for everybody on the call who is looking for funding, regardless of the stage. So thank you all for joining. Anna-Marie, would you like to say anything to close off?
Just thanks to all the panelists. Thank you all for your time. Thanks for attending. And Sarah Jane, would you like to say a few words just to close out?
Well, just thank you to everybody at Enterprise Ireland and everybody on the call. I hope you have found this helpful. I think some of the things I've taken away, hope people have an idea of whether in the first place venture capital funding is appropriate for your business. I think people have gotten a really good sense today of what's involved. We can't ignore the fact that venture capital is a financial asset class, and those investors therefore are looking for companies that can deliver significant returns, and looking at at your business with that lens. And I think for any of you who are interested in venture capital funding, this has been a really, really good, useful conversation about where to start.
Thank you, Sarah Jane.
Thank you all. Have a good day. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.